Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. And today I'm doing something that I've only done like one or two other times, but I have a return guest. Welcome, Meredith. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Good. So we talked like literally one of my very first episodes ever.
Was it?
Yeah, it was within
that's awesome.
first like 10 maybe or something like that. It was
Okay.
so long ago. And so I know that so many people listen to this podcast now that didn't listen, and so they don't know you. So I still want you to go back through all the things and tell me your whole story.
Oh yeah, I have a great story. I mean, don't we all? So let's see. I haven't started from the beginning in a long time. This is good. This is good practice, Annie. Thank you for having me on yours. No, just kidding. So I left home at 18 and started drinking, and I pretty much did that for 20 years. And I was a mom.
Why did you leave? What was going on? Why'd you leave?
Well, why'd I leave home? I graduated high school and then I went off to college and I never stepped foot back in home. Like I just needed to get out of home and not go back. And it was interesting that once I got out of home, I just started drinking like a lunatic. No connection there. It's fine. But anyway, went off to college and drank a ton, but everyone does that in college, right? And so then I go on to law school, get married, have a couple kids, and I'm still doing it. I'm still drinking a ton. And I was a blackout drinker. What's the point of one drink? It was 0 or 10. And just a very, very big, heavy drinker in all sense of the words. I got up to about 280 pounds. I was not I was a fun drunk for a few glasses and then I wasn't. So there's always that damage that you leave behind in your wake, which is always fun. But one morning, I started doing the sport of triathlon in 2010 because I thought if I exercise, then I'm healthy. And so I did triathlon. I started doing that. And so I went on to do big races and all this stuff while still having a very serious drinking problem. And so one morning, it was in 2014, I woke up and my alarm went off and I turned it off and I rolled over and went back to bed. And no matter what had happened in my life, I always got up. I did the things I needed to do. I mean, I might have been like, oh my gosh, suffering. But I got my kids to school. I did all the mom things. I was holding it together. I was doing it all. And that morning, I just turned off my alarm and I went back to bed. And I woke up a couple hours later and the kids were gone. So I knew they were at school or missing, one or the other. And I went downstairs and there was empty bottles of wine, a pizza box, an ice cream container, some unpaid credit card bills, like arranged on the counter, like someone had put them out for me. And
display, like here.
Yes. And I was like, boy, I sure did put those out nice and neat last night, And then I look and there's a Post-it note on the counter and I look at it and it's in my husband's handwriting. And can I cuss?
Yeah.
Okay. He goes, on this Post-it note, it says, you need to get your shit together. And I was like, is this for me? This is not for me. Like, who is this note for? And so then I got really mad. And I got out my phone and I started composing like the angriest, longest text, complete with the, proper emojis, the devil horn, the gun, the knife, like of a woman who had been scorned, Did he not know who I was? All the things I did for him, for these children, And then I looked out of the corner of my eye and there was a poster board from my first grader that was on the floor that I had promised to help her with a science project that morning before school. And I did not. And not even the fact that I didn't help her, I didn't even come up with an excuse or a reason why I couldn't, And so that was something that really struck me. And I thought, okay, this is my problem. This is not good. But this was 2014. I did not get sober until 2015. So I like to call that not the rock bottom. I had a few more since then, like a couple, really rough events. And yeah, that was the beginning of the realization that I needed to get my shit together. But then I didn't right away. And it took me a lot of bargaining and negotiations with myself before I woke up and decided. I set a date. And the actual rock bottom came with the realization that every time I drove home from work, I thought about driving into this tree. It was at the bottom of this big hill near my house. And it was just like a thought, like, oh, I wonder what I'll eat for dinner. It was like, oh, I'll just drive into this tree and then make it all stop. And one time my kids were in the car and I had the thought, and I thought, oh my gosh, one day I'm going to do this. And I had this very real sense that I would not make it another year. I knew I would be dead. I would be dead in one way or another, whether myself, an accident, and I wasn't driving drunk when I was thinking of driving into the tree, but that was even worse, right? Because I wasn't drinking and having those thoughts. And so I set a date. It was December 12th. So I'm coming up on 4 years. And I just knew I had my husband's work party on a Friday night, and I knew that would be my last drink. And I know people go back and forth and say, oh, you should never say that. But for me, having the absolute certainty that that was it for me that's been a big part of my recovery, because I'm very stubborn. And so when I decide something is done, it's usually done. And but that doesn't mean it was easy. And that doesn't mean that I don't hear a martini shaker to this day and stop my ears. It's still hard. But interestingly, when I set that date, I went to that work party, and I think that was the only time in my life I had one drink, because I was done. I was just done. I knew it was over for me. And when I go to parties now and people ask, oh, you don't drink? I'm like, no, I lost that privilege. I'm on permanent restriction. That's what I say. I'm like, nope, I tried that experiment. So here I am 4 years later, and life is, everyone says, oh, life on this side of sobriety is so much better. And I think when I was drinking, I could have rolled my eyes and been like, whatever, you don't want to hear that until you need to hear it, until you're ready to hear it. But it's so true. I mean, just last night I woke up at 3 a.m. because I have this book coming out in 2 weeks, and it's a little intense. But I woke up at 3 and I got out of bed and I just did stuff, till 7 a.m. And then I went back to sleep. But that's the kind of stuff you can't do as a drinker, You can't wake up when you've binge drank all night. So yeah, it's been good to be sober. It really has.
I love that. It's just really authentic, because I think that a lot of people, I think we try to convince ourselves sometimes of things that might not actually authentically feel true to us, right? We're trying to have all these super positive thoughts, and we know what we want to believe. So we're trying to tell ourselves the things that we want to believe, but we don't yet quite believe them. And I'm a big fan of actually transitioning to what you want to believe through little things that you can actually believe at this point in time.
Yes.
And so instead of it's the best thing I've ever done with my life, you're it's good to be sober. And I feel like that was, I remember I had some, the notes app on your phone. And I remember different times when I'd write myself different things during my whole journey of finding my way out of alcohol. And I would write myself I would be drunk, and I would write myself it was better sober. It was better before you started drinking. You felt better. Just remember this, And
that's smart.
Really go look at it that because I didn't want to know when I was, then the next day craving or whatever. But
right.
Yeah, it was just interesting that I like that. It's just, it's good. It's just a little, sometimes all you need is just a little bit better. And
yeah. And I think, it's better in ways that we're maybe not bargaining with, we don't really necessarily want, your skin is better and you feel better, as a human, you feel better. But then there's this whole, oh, I have to feel emotions kind of thing. And So that's not always feeling better to a degree. Because I mean, after a while, I think the first year sober, you're just kind of riding that wave and you're proud of yourself and you're doing it. But then I don't know, something about year 2 and 3, you kind of realize why you drank. Because like some of those emotions that I know for me, the start of year 3 for me was when I kind of uncovered the reason I drank and some of the trauma and some of the past and real thoughts about myself. And I'm like, oh, that's why I did that. Now I have to sit through it and feel it and figure out how to cope with it in a healthy way. And so that, yeah, it's better to be sober, but that's a very real part of it that we have to come to terms with.
So give me an example and like, how do you cope with it?
Oh, well, I think when you have this kind of personality, it's very natural to just go to the nearest available mechanism for soothing. When I was a kid, it was food, and then it became booze and food. And so for me now, I have to be very cognizant of the fact that a pint of ice cream and a large pizza is not a healthy meal or a snack, as it might be. So I have to look at how I'm using my coping mechanisms that are around me, because they can just kind of trickle down. If it's not food, then it can become obsessive exercise, and then it can become money. I'm just on Amazon, just click, 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 click. Oh, I need that, and so realizing for me that it's an emotional spiral that I'm in, like, okay, you're starting to do it and you're starting to twist and turn, and you have to just stop. And so what I do is I journal. That has been the number one most effective, most beneficial, healthy coping mechanism. And the scary thing is kind of the things I do journal sometimes. And that's why I really like morning pages, the Julia Cameron method, where you just get it all out and then you can destroy it or you type it on your computer and you delete it. So journaling, I think, has connotation that we have to keep it for posterity and, edit it in case our spouse finds it. But when you can just unedit, write, or even voice record, that's what I tell some of my clients. Like, look, get on your voice recorder and just talk. Or Marco Polo Me. Marco Polo app is awesome. And so just getting it out of your head and just into the world, not necessarily for others to read, but out into the universe, somewhere not in your head, is the best coping mechanism for sure. And some of the early journaling, like early sobriety journaling, that's some messed up stuff. I do have a journal from my first 6 months, and I'll just flip through it sometimes as a reminder of how bad it was, because that journaling is really, it was really bad. And when you're in it, you feel bad, it's bad, but until you're out of it, I think you don't know how bad it was, at least for me.
I love that. I always tell people, I'm like, literally just write as it and plan to burn it. Like literally plan to put it in the fireplace. And if that's, then you allow yourself to write unfiltered, because I think that was a big game changer for me. It was funny. I always wanted to be a writer, but my idea of wanting to be a writer was I was going to write novels, probably historical fiction with my glass of wine in some mountain chalet or whatever.
I was a martini in a silk robe. That was me. Yeah.
And so I am a writer, but it is very different than I write self-help books about putting
Right.
So funny. But I think that because of that, I was somebody told me early days, if you want to be a writer, write every day. And so I literally have my journal right here. And I was journaling before, this morning, and it's okay, every day. And I just fill up notebook after notebook after notebook. And when I crossed the threshold of writing for other people, or writing for other people to read it, or even writing for myself to read it, and said, oh, I'm just gonna write. I really like how Brooke Castillo, she is a life coach, and she talks about a thought download. She's like, just download your thoughts, just get them out. And it's oh, that's cool, because it's just filtering out, and now it's on paper, and now you can actually do nothing with it, throw it away, do something with it. But guess what? Your brain space it's just a release valve,
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And if you do want to be a writer, there's nuggets. You know, even when you're not trying, like I had something this morning I was dumping about, oh my God, this book is going to be terrible. Everyone hates it. Everyone's going to love it, you know, and it makes no sense. But then I wrote something like, well, I should have just continued to be a lawyer, because I was a lawyer. I quit the legal profession 2 years ago. And I was like, if you had not left the law, you wouldn't be broke. And you'd, you know, and it was this whole train of thought. And it was like, there was no risk there. And then I was like, wait a minute. And I started like analyzing what is taking a risk, and is it more risky to stay in a job you hate and hope it pans out, or is, you know, so then it became, oh, I could actually use that. And so then I get my other notebook and I'm like, good idea for a Medium article later, you know. But that's not usually that's not why I sat down to do it, but sometimes good things come out of it. But now I don't know how I feel about that topic, so carry on.
I love that topic. I absolutely would read that article. I think you should write that. And I think it's so true. It's like, we don't count risk of staying the same. Like, our brains only go to the risk of changing, and don't actually count the risk of not changing. And I think it's such an important topic, because like, there's a lot of risk in not changing. There's a lot of risk in like, you know, because we don't think about it. Well, the same is fine, but no, what are you missing out on if you don't risk, if you don't try, you know? It's really interesting. It's a great topic.
Yeah. The hard part for me was I actually really liked my law job toward the end. Like right before I left, I loved the boss I worked for. I was working from home doing legal work. So, I mean, it's like the best of both worlds. And so it was like, this is really risky. This is really risky. And then after I left the legal profession, like a lot of the partnerships and businesses that I had built, like my side hustle sort of fell apart. And so 4 months after I quit my well-paying legal job, my side hustle kind of fell apart. And I was standing there going, oh, this is really great. This is excellent. Like, now I've really done it. And I thought, oh my gosh, everything is falling apart. I'm so stupid. And it turned, and at the time I thought I was dying. I thought, this is the worst thing. I felt so sick. I was still sober. I stayed sober through that time, but out of that year was so terrible. It was 2017. I call that the year that can kiss my ass. Like, it was just a horrible year, horrible, no good, bad year. But what came, now that I look back on that year, everything that fell apart, all the relationships, all the businesses, it was such a great thing. It set me up for exactly where I sit right now, which is a place of terror, but it's fine. But really good opportunities and a chance to ask myself, okay, I'm turning 40. What do I want? What does life mean? What is the meaning of life? How can I really use my gifts or my, you know, troubles to help people? And I can look back on those times and say, I'm so glad I went through all of it. But you can't see that when you're in the middle of it.
I love how you name your years, because your book is called The Year of No Nonsense.
Right. And it started in 2017. That's when I kind of looked around and I was like, my whole life is nonsense. You are nonsense. You are nonsense. This is nonsense. And I just said, what if I had a year of no nonsense, which, you know, is kind of a pipe dream, right? But it really turned into quite the experiment. And the book came out of that, because literally, and this is kind of the mind-boggling thing, you can boil down every single person, place, or thing in your life to nonsense, yes or no. Like, it's either not nonsense or it is nonsense. And to think about other people as nonsense is kind of, but you know what I mean. I mean, there are people who to you are nonsense. It doesn't mean they're just nonsense as a person, but your relationship with them is nonsense. And so boiling down my choices, because everything was so hard that year, I thought I didn't even have the brain power to process what had just happened to me. And so having a simple guiding question, like, is this nonsense? Yes or no? It saved me. I was able to put things in a box, either here I deal with it, here, no, I'm not dealing with you anymore, or not dealing with this thing. I'm not going to this PTA meeting. I'm not baking this casserole. I'm not going to your potluck. I'm not going to family vacation when I am exhausted and have an attitude problem. Like, all these things, it simplified everything.
Yeah, and it makes you, I'm such an advocate in my own life and just in general for like curiosity, right? And a guiding question invites curiosity. So if you're going to start to ask, like, is this nonsense? Like, what a cool question, because it's, you know, and especially if you're going to force the answer to be yes or no,
Right.
you really have to look at like, okay, you know, what is impacting, and it really gets down to what we were talking about before, the cost of staying the same, the cost of staying in the nonsense, the cost of allowing yourself to be, I mean, we just had a week of, my son is turning 11. And so like, oh my gosh, like just, he wants a certain type of party, which no longer involves his grandparents. His grandparents all want to see him on his birthday, his cousins. So now we're having a party for him, for a slumber party for like 8 boys. And then we're having like a family party. And then the different sides of the family can't make it on the same time. So now we're having 3 different parties. And I'm like, wait a second, like what is happening, you know? And it just, at some point you have to be like, okay, what's the important thing here? Like, where's the no nonsense? It's that he wants to celebrate his birthday and actually he doesn't care about all the rest of it. So how many people am I, you know, pleasing in the process that is just creating so much more stress and drama?
Chapter 8, I think it's chapter 8 or 11, people pleasing. It gets its own chapter, I think, in the book. Okay. Yeah, major theme. But it's interesting because alcohol is obviously a big theme in my life. And I talk about how everyone has a personal biggest brand of nonsense. And it's like the one thing that is standing in the way of your health, happiness, and success. And all these things are subjective. Like your nonsense is not my nonsense. Like not everyone has a drinking problem. So alcohol is not nonsense for everyone. I mean, I kind of think alcohol might just be nonsense, but that's just my personal belief. But I also understand that you can go to a restaurant and sit down with someone and they will drink a half glass of wine and they will leave okay. And I'm like, that is not a problem for you. And I'm like, just drink it, drink the rest of it. Like, don't leave it. It drives me crazy. But understanding that we all have our own personal brands of nonsense is really the key. And then just to keep your eyes on your own plate and on your own, in your own lane, you know, worrying about what you've got and what your nonsense is, and just understanding that the other people's nonsense is not your problem. Was it Wayne Dwyer? What other people think of me is none of my business. I love that quote, paraphrased of course, but yeah, the other people, you can't control anything about other people. Nothing. And coming to that realization, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Even 11-year-olds, you can't control them. I have a 12-year-old and an 11-year-old actually.
And trying to be like, okay, it took me 40 years to learn that like, I'm the only one I can control and that I should care, you know, to control, which is always, I mean, that's going to be a lifelong thing because you always want people to do things your way.
Right.
But then, you know, trying to instill that in our kids too, be like, look, you're up to you. And it's like, wait, what?
Right. And with 2 kids, like I have 2 that are 14 months apart and my daughter likes to control my son. And I mean, she wants to control him and he's older, which is even funnier but yeah, I keep telling her, I'm like, stop, you cannot control him. And she's like, but I want to.
Do things my way.
But I want to.
So if you take us back to like the note, the get your shit together note.
Yeah.
So what was the immediate fallout and what is it like now? I mean, is your husband like, nice, you did it, you got your shit together, well done?
Of course. So I call my husband the expert. Like that's been his nickname on the blog for 10 years because he's a scientist and he thinks he knows everything and he's a man. And so I've always called him the expert. And so, yeah, now he's very proud, you know, we'll see. I told you just needed to get your shit together. But it's interesting because it's still marriage, which is hard. Like no one tells you like how hard marriage and parenting is. But I wake up every morning and we live in a house in Massachusetts now that has a bathroom the size of a very tiny closet and 1 sink. But we used to have a bigger house in Atlanta that had 2 sinks, and I could stand in the bathroom brushing my teeth in the morning and look at him and not remember like what went down the night before. And I would kind of get my clues like, is he brushing angrily? Is he, you know, I don't have that anymore. Like now we climb over each other in the little tiny bathroom. And if we're mad, I know why we're mad because I remember. So it's like the little things that normal sober people, I guess, take for granted, you know, remembering the conversations the night before, not doing really dumb stuff. And so from that angle, it's really great, you know, and it's from that, is it My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where the woman's like, oh, the woman is the neck, like she turns the head of the, I don't know, something about like women kind of direct the family. And, you know, you can take or leave that, but I think there's some real truth to when mom has her shit together. Just men absolutely lead households, women lead households, and it doesn't matter like what kind of household you have or who's in it. Someone is kind of the guiding force, I think. And I have always set the tone for our house, whatever, like maybe I'm a slightly stronger, stubborn personality, but when I have myself together, it's better. Like the food in the house is better. The schedule runs smoother. And so me getting sober has made our whole family better. The kids are less anxious, and I've got, I think they're young enough where they don't remember me drinking, which is great. But that doesn't mean that they didn't feel the effects of it, that their nervous system wasn't impacted. I especially think my son was probably the hardest hit with my drinking, plus a sister that came 14 months later. And I think the way that I can parent him now is so much better. Like, it's just, I'm not trying to figure out how I can get hydrated or how I can survive the day because my head is pounding. I can focus on his needs, you know, not necessarily putting his needs above my own. I mean, you do naturally as a parent, but it's natural to be like, hey, how did you sleep? Or would you like some breakfast, instead of like, oh my God, just stop talking to me, you know? So the effects are huge. I guess when I say it's not, it's huge. I think that I would have two very, very unhappy children, and they wouldn't know why, because I probably would have held it together, you know, externally. But the impact on their little nervous systems and the impact on their schooling and their ability to, or my ability to help them with homework versus like, I've got to get this done so they will go to bed so I can drink. You know, that whole thing, it doesn't matter. There's no rush to get out of any situation so I can go drink. And I just wanted them to go to bed all the time. And I still do. I mean, I'm human. I'm still like, go to bed. But it's just because I want them to go to bed. It's not because I need to get into the bottle. Right.
I still remember that. I remember being like, especially nights where, you know, you'd already planned for like friends to come over, or especially because like we had, I don't know if we had kids like early for our friend group, but I do feel like we had a lot of friends who didn't have kids, right? And so especially if we were inviting them over, and then you wanted to be like all put together, so you wanted to have your baby down, and then they wouldn't fall asleep that night for some reason, and you know all your friends are in the kitchen with all the wine, and you're just like in the like what's happening, and you're just getting so frustrated, and half the frustration is because of the alcohol, and maybe half of it is because your friends are out there, but you'd be so much more tolerant of it. I so vividly remember that, because our house was just like, we always were having people over, and it was always, you know, if people are over, then it was definitely an excuse to way overdo it with drinking because people are here. I remember one time we had a pool in our neighborhood, and I remember one time we had a couple over, and they also had young kids, and we all went to the pool. And so we're at the pool with I had two at the time, she had two at the time. We're at the pool with 4 young kids and our husbands. Everybody's drinking. I think what I had done is something that I did all the time, which was basically take like half an orange juice bottle, and then you know, half vodka or half rum, or, you know, just make something that doesn't even taste good, but it's super alcoholic, and it comes in an orange juice bottle, and then bring it in a plastic container to the pool. Yeah. And so I remember getting home, and my memory of this day is her throwing up in the bathroom. Like, we're like 30-some-year-old, like, you know, moms, and me like in there with her feeling super sick, laying on the floor, no clue where the kids are, no clue where our husbands are, like just my tiny snippet of a memory of that day. what is even happening?
Right. Right. I mean, yeah. And then you think, and this is where it gets hard as a sober person, because when you look back on those kind of behaviors, the tendency to go toward regret and to go to shame, I mean, it's very real. It's very easy to think the worst could have happened, and oh my gosh, what a terrible human I was, let alone parent. And so part of, I think, moving forward is understanding the simple fact that you can literally do nothing about anything that happened in the past, even 10 minutes ago. That, I mean, you're going to have consequences, but you can't change anything. You only have today. I mean, tomorrow is not promised, like bummer, but I mean, look around, it's not promised. And so being present is, I think, hard. It's hard for especially new sober people, because that's what we were trying to avoid. Let's be real. Like with drinking, it was like, okay, I don't want to be present for whatever reason. So learning to take joy in being present is kind of my motto for this year, I think. It's only taken 4 years of sobriety for me to be like, hey, I should work on this. But it's real.
Well, I think that's what opens up I think you start to realize that there's always something to work on. And actually the work is the journey. I think when I was drinking, and this is just so, I don't know if this is alcohol or just our society or all the things, but it was so much focusing on that one next thing, right? Like I remember so vividly, it was the boyfriend, and then it was the college degree, and then it was the husband, and then it was the baby, and then it was the promotion, and then it was, the house. And then I remember getting like, I always would have this argument with my girlfriend, who would be like, well, of course, like you've got everything, like you have all the things. And I was like, yeah, okay. But having all the things and waking up on the closet floor, not feeling like you want to live, like,
right.
That's worse, because when you don't have all the things, at least you feel like you have a reason that you're waking
right.
up. But when you have the kids and the house and the husband and the job, and like you have all the things, and you're still so miserable. And I think that's what's so cool about your story. And I love how you call like a recovering attorney, but like just this idea of, wow, wait a second, all the things. And so then once you can put all the things down, and for me, putting all the things down or realizing I have all the things and I'm not happy, I can really, if I overlay my calendars, say, wow, drinking took to another level. Like, it was very much, okay, how do I deal with myself now? How do I deal with myself in this space where I've achieved everything that was supposed to make me happy and I'm not? And that was a big thing.
Well, I know, like I looked at my Time Hop, which I think I'm just going to uninstall that app on my phone for like many reasons. But I think it was yesterday's. Must have been 5 or 6 years ago, because I remember everything about this day. We were at Lenox Mall in Atlanta, which is like one of the two, snooty snoot malls in Atlanta. And I had bought a new Louis Vuitton bag. And I was in a green sweater and I was sucking in my belly. I remember having my husband take like 10 shots of this with my new purse, and the kids were, I guess, in a stroller somewhere. But I was so hungover, and I remember it had taken me a really long time to look like I did. And yet I was still like 50 pounds overweight, unhealthy, sad. And there I am with my ridiculously expensive bag that I have not carried in 5 years. But I love my Target bag.
Right.
And it was all about just, maybe this thing will make it better. Maybe this will show that I'm successful and have my act together. And nothing against Louis Vuitton bags. They are fine bags. And I do have a wallet that I bought 5 years ago, and it looks brand new. I mean, it is impeccable quality. But the reason I was carrying that I can't even carry that bag. My husband is like, why do you not carry that purse? Because he was there when we purchased it. And, it's a car. It just sits because when I carry that bag, it reminds me of a time when nothing was enough, when nothing was enough. The 2 healthy children in the stroller were not enough, and nothing thing was enough, and I don't like it. So I have a Louis Vuitton for sale if anyone would like it. Dirt cheap, just to get it out of the house.
On MeredithAtwood.com.
I know.
Subject Louis Vuitton.
I should auction it for like charity. That's actually a really good idea.
Wait until your book is a New York Times bestseller. And
oh, that's right. When I have like all this money, right? Because authors are rich.
No, I just mean the auction make more money. The author, no go. No go.
The misconceptions of this industry. Let's talk about that.
The living being an author. But no, it's so true. And it is like just putting down the striving and saying, okay, what's here? And I think like then realizing that, okay, like there's no destination.
Yes.
There's no moment where I'm going to wake up and all the pieces have fit together. And I think the Louis Vuitton bag is so interesting because it's like, okay, I have an idea in my head of what a woman feels, thinks, and is when she carries that bag, what her life looks like. And that idea is so much more than what the bag is. I remember having this experience in a totally very different arena, but and this was after I'd stopped drinking. But I had an idea of what somebody who was like written about in Forbes magazine, what their life would be like. What, and because I was a corporate person and I had this whole business background, I have master's degree, all this stuff, MBA. And like, it's like, okay, if you're in Forbes magazine, like this is how your life is. And I remember taking an interview and the article coming out and being like, no, my life still my life. Wait, what? And it was just this moment of like, oh wait, okay, like there's nothing besides the journey and the destination and the everyday just really making things in you know. And it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I've actually been reading this book. I'm not gonna remember the title, but in this book it was like the whole idea was like, okay, you need to like level yourself with the fact that you're just going to die. Everything's going to be like, and you're going to die with disappointments. No matter what you do, no matter how successful you are, you're going to die at the most disappointed and the least disappointed. And you're going to have feelings and thoughts about it. And it's not going to be different than this.
Yeah.
And take it down to the bottom, because once you can totally level it, like at the bottom, then you feel like there's nothing to risk. You can do all the things that you're so afraid of doing.
Yeah, it's like the Stoicism, like Daily Stoic with Ryan Holiday, and that I love that, because I'm so not that by nature. I'm not a Stoic. I am a, highly emotional, heart on my sleeve, freak out. Yes. And so reading, the Daily Stoic and saying, it'll start out today, you might die. And I'm like, oh no, don't tell me that. But it's true. Like when you boil down life to life, we're going to die. And we've had a lot of people in our life die recently. And it's just, I'm sitting here like, oh my God, my book, like, are people going to like it? Is it going to sell? Am I going to get speaking? It doesn't matter, because one day I'm going to die and no one cares. And that's kind of a terrible way to look at things, but it's true. When you take the pressure off yourself to do all this next big thing and just enjoy where you are, even when it's terrible, because the beautiful thing about the terrible things is you are learning something big. Something big is being learned. Yeah.
So true. There's just like, and when you're open to it, and like, you're never going to escape the good or the bad or the disappointment or the want for something else or the feeling you have when you scroll on Instagram and you're like, well, that's wrong in my life and that's wrong in my life and I'm not doing what that person's doing. And it doesn't matter who you are. You're never going to escape that. I think when you just say, okay, I'm going to let that be and just be curious about it and forgive myself for having those feelings and just allow them. Like, I think that's such a, okay, then that becomes kind of the journey. Right?
Yeah. I mean, my big thing is when I see people on vacation and I get like irrationally angry, even though like I was just in Colorado. I mean, granted I was there for work but I was in Colorado. I had a couple of days of vacation. But also I have a porch full of workout equipment, and that's my vacation. Like, that's why I haven't been on vacation, is because I buy treadmills and bicycles and stuff. But yeah, like realizing, wait, you're choosing this life. Like, you're choosing to work really hard in this phase. You're choosing to buy a Stairmaster instead of going to Disney. You know, everything's a choice, and just realizing that I have some say, that there's no need to be jealous. There's no need to compare. I have a say in all these things.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
All right, so 2 last questions. First of all, where can people get your book? It's The Year of No Nonsense.
The Year of No Nonsense, How to Get Over Yourself and On with Your Life. Isn't that the truth? It's available pretty much everywhere you would find your books. You know, Amazon, indie bookstores will have it. You can order it from your local bookstore. I definitely want to make sure we shout the local bookstores over the big giants, but the big giants are supporting the book too. So it's on Apple Books and Kindle and Audible. I mean, pretty much any, you know, it's traditionally published. So all the Hachette Books has got it out there. So where the big things go, it's following. It's got a pretty good distribution. So it'll be in Target and Walmart in the new year and in a bunch of stores. So if you see it, take a picture of it in the wild. But 2 weeks, yeah, December 17th. So I don't know when this will air, but December 17th.
After that. So
okay.
So it's out.
So it's out. It's in the wild. Yeah.
And then where else can people find you?
So I am everywhere at Swim Bike Mom, and that came from my triathlon days, which I'm not doing a lot of that right now, but I still do some. Instead of Swim Bike Run, I use Mom as a synonym. So Swim Bike Mom, just all the places. That's the website, Twitter, Instagram, all of it.
So good. And then, so the last question I always follow up with, which is like, what would you know, you're talking back to Meredith, who just got the note from her husband, and she's, what would you tell her about how things are now?
I think I would tell her things will get better, but you need to really forgive yourself. Because I spent a lot of the last 4 years really hating on myself, and it's just in the last year and a half or so that I've been able to accept. I have a hard time with the concept of self-love and self-care. Like, I don't like it from a starting point, because I think there's too much of the industry out there telling us, oh, you need more self-care, you need more self-love. But so many of us that have struggled with alcohol, that's part of the reason we got there in the first place, is those are foreign concepts. And when you tell someone who's struggling to just love themselves or to care more for themselves, that's not a starting point. I think you have to get there. And it doesn't necessarily come with self-care. It comes with doing the necessary next step. And for most of us in that position, it's don't drink today, you know, take care of your family. But with that comes the space for self-care and the time and energy for self-love. So it's a byproduct, and it's not necessarily the cure-all. And so I think I tried to force a lot of the self-love, and it just wasn't available to me yet. And so I would just say, be kind to that Meredith as she goes down that path. There will be room for self-love, but maybe not right this second.
It's so good. I mean, it's really what we were thinking about before, of like the idea that there's like you have to move from something that you believe now, which is that you're worthless.
Yeah.
For a lot of us, to something, and people are like, well, just jump to you love yourself. Well, that's too big of a jump. Like you can't make that jump. It's like a ladder. You have to take the first step, which is, okay, I'm worthless. Well, I'm actually here taking up space. So I have presence, and maybe that's the first thought you have to think. And then maybe it's like, oh, I'm I'm actually worth the breath going in and out of my lungs, because I am breathing. I can't argue with that.
Right.
And I think sometimes we jump so far to these super positive things, and we create almost more conflict inside ourselves.
Right.
We don't believe it yet. And so I think exactly what you're saying is like, it can be such a byproduct. One of the ways that I started thinking about it in the early days for me was like, okay, like I take care of my kids, like, because they have bodies and because they need nourishment, right? Like I take care, like I feed them, you know, and like, to be really honest, like I didn't feed myself.
Right.
Like I
Right.
drank coffee until it was like 3 p.m. and then I drank wine and maybe a few appetizers until it was like 2 a.m. and then I do it the next day. And like, so just little things like that, like, okay, I have a body that needs to be fed. And so starting there, you know, just recognizing that, you know, I have, and just thinking, okay, how would I treat my kids, and really starting to hear what I said to myself, you know, very little steps. I think that's great.
And I think too, like the whole positive vibes only culture is so toxic. I get the sentiment, but positive vibes only, like, no, like what? No. And I think for me, I kind of grew up in a positive vibes only household, and that led to suppressing feelings and not learning how to handle anger and really unproductive coping mechanisms. And so like when I see positive vibes only, I'm like, no. I mean, I get it, but you know, I think we have to deal with the emotions.
Well, it's not realistic. I mean, like by definition, you can't enjoy food unless you're hungry, right? So if you only have positive vibes, you're not even going to be able to recognize they're positive because you've never felt anything negative. They would just baseline.
Oh, and that's a good one. Yeah.
You have to have the contrast in order to feel the good. Like you can't not. Like, I mean, you just can't.
Right.
So we have to have both ups and downs. We have to have the whole realm of human experience. And by the way, you don't want positive vibes. If, you know, we were driving the other day and a deer like got hit on the side of the road, and I don't want to feel positive vibes in that situation. I'd be a monster if I did. If I was sharing with my kids, like, don't be sad here. Like we need to be able to, like, we're humans with a human range of emotions.
Right.
We need to be able to experience them. That's super toxic. I mean, that is exactly what's going to get you in trouble, because you're going to try to always be happy. And I haven't talked about it in the positive vibes only, but like in this whole, like, you know, the goal is not happiness, people.
Right.
It's not to be happy. That is not the goal. And I think, you know, the goal is really just, I hope that, you know, I will be able to get this book that I have out of my head, but the title is going to be How to Be Happy, Crossed Out Human, which is going to be
good
when you can't see it in an artsy way. But how's that going to work? But anyway.
I actually talk in my book about how happiness is a lie we've been told.
Yeah.
It's just not. Yeah.
All right. So get Meredith's book. So good. And I'm going to read. And I was really excited when I got the early release copy and I saw my name next to Tony Hawk, because that's like total like childhood, like, oh, Tony Hawk. So
I know my husband loves him too.
Super awesome. So I wrote about Meredith's book. I said, peace, happiness, and freedom come from knowing what to care about and, most importantly, what to let go of. This important book is a testament to the idea that when we see and let go of the nonsense in our lives, we allow ourselves to step into true freedom. Meredith gives us a roadmap for peace in the nonsense-filled world. And I thought it was excellent and highly recommend. So
thank you for your support, and I'm glad you like it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Meredith. It's always such a pleasure. Thank you for being my second guest. Very cool.
I'm honored. Thank you, Annie. I appreciate you so much.
Have a good day.
You too.
Let me ask you a question. What is better than change? Lasting change, of course. And if you've had trouble making change stick, either with alcohol or in any other area of your life, you are in for a treat. I created the 100 Days of Lasting Change to ensure that we don't just change for a moment, but we truly transform for a lifetime. And this program is so close to my heart. Thousands of people have been through it and their results are incredible. But don't take my word for it. Check it out at thisnakedmind.com/100 days. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.